For 15 years for Senator Carl Levin, did a lot of anti-money laundering investigations. I'm here today to talk to you about beneficial ownership. We've heard a lot about the links between kleptocracy, terrorism, organized crime, corruption, political instability. A first step in fighting back is to increase transparency. The big-scale kleptocrats out in the world today use legal entities to hide their identities, open accounts, move money. That's what they do. When you have a lot of money, you want to be able to hide your identity, and the vehicle of choice these days is corporations and LLCs. Right now, it's very easy for kleptocrats, as well as terrorists, drug lords, sex traffickers, other wrongdoers, to set up corporations where their identity is hidden. The U.S. sets up about 2 million corporations a year, which is as much as the rest of the world put together. Not one of our 50 states, when they form a corporation, asks who's going to own or control that entity. You actually have to give more information to get a library card than to set up a U.S. corporation. Even if one of the states wanted to do the right thing and ask for that information, it wouldn't make much of a difference because the bad guys would just go to a different state. So we really need all 50 states to stop the practice of setting up corporations with hidden owners. So 3 bipartisan bills have been introduced in Congress to do just that. They would end the formation of U.S. corporations with hidden owners. The Wyden-Rubio bill in the Senate, the Maloney-King bill in the House, and a White House-Grassley bill also in the Senate. All 3 bills would require people applying to set up a U.S. corporation to disclose the beneficial owners of those entities. Now, beneficial owner is defined as a natural person who directly or indirectly controls or has an ownership interest in the corporation or LLC. What a beneficial owner is not is a nominee, a manager, an officer, a trustee of a trust. It has to be people who either control that corporation or have an ownership interest, benefit from the economic benefits of that entity. That's who we're talking about. Now, one bill would ask the states to collect that information. As they form the corporations, they'd say, you know, in addition to giving us the name of the corporation and how you're going to set it up, tell us who the beneficial owners are. 2 of the bills would say, no, let's have FinCEN do that on the federal level, create a federal get that information to be filed with FinCEN. But whether it's on the state level or the federal level, it would require the same information. Now, neither the state nor FinCEN would be required to verify that information because that would really slow down the process. But all 3 bills would impose civil or criminal penalties on individuals who submit false information. And in addition, all 3 bills would make the information available to law enforcement and to financial institutions with anti-money laundering obligations. So these bills, which have been around for a while, are starting to pick up steam. And they're now they've always been strongly supported by law enforcement. National Fraternal Order of Police, the Federal Law Enforcement Officers Association, many others have endorsed this type of legislation. But what's new is that we now have them endorsed by financial institutions who are required by law, and especially the new due diligence requirement from Treasury, to know who their clients are. So we have the Clearinghouse, an organization of the largest banks in America, the Independent Community Bankers of America, the smaller banks. We have the Bankers Association for Finance and Trade, and the Institute of International Bankers, so we're talking about the global financial institutions. Even the credit unions have endorsed it. For example, the Credit Union National Association. So you've got all of these financial institutions for the very first time saying, we want this legislation. When we do our investigations of our clients, we want to be able to ask them, just give us the piece of paper that you filed under, where you can't make a false statement, give us a copy of that. That's going to help us know who our clients are. In addition, we've had a bunch of businesses endorse the bills. These are businesses that want to know who they're dealing with and are sick and tired of being surprised by something in their supply chain. So some of the big companies are Dow Chemical, Allianz, Salesforce, Unilever, the Virgin Group, and there's small business groups as well, Small Business Majority, Main Street Alliance. So we have businesses that are big and international, and we have smaller businesses saying, We want to know who we're dealing with. There's also a competitiveness factor. The honest businesses, people know who I am. I want people to be able to know who my competitors are as well. Just last year, Ernst & Young did a global fraud survey that found 91% of senior executives believe it's important to know the ultimate owner of the entities with which they do business. They want to know who they're dealing with. Now, this legislation, should we enact it, would put the United States in alignment with the rest of the world. There's an international effort going on in this area. The G20 started it saying we need to start to know who's behind these corporations for corruption reasons, criminal reasons, national security reasons. The EU now requires all of its member countries to include beneficial ownership information in their corporate registries. They say that that information has to be made available to persons with a, quote, legitimate interest. That's still being defined, but it includes law enforcement, may include financial institutions, may include journalists as well. A growing number of countries have taken another step, and they're making their beneficial ownership information available to the public, saying people have a right to know who's behind corporations. They were never intended to be vehicles for secrecy. The corporate form was created so that we could shield people who are interested in business from personal liability. That's why corporations were set up. They were never designed and never intended to be a way to hide your identity. And the world is starting to move away from that. Last year, the United Kingdom made all of its beneficial ownership information public. People predicted the world would end, nobody would, create corporations there. None of that happened. In fact, it's working very well. Other countries, Norway, Ukraine, and a lot of other countries are talking about it, countries in Africa and elsewhere. Now, the important thing to think about that is, as the rest of the world cracks down on corporate secrecy, where are those wrongdoers going to go? What's the country that still has absolutely anonymity for people who form corporations? Well, it's the United States. And as other wrongdoers, kleptocrats, criminals, figure out where to go, they're going to be looking here. Because right now, we're one of the few countries that doesn't require even asking who the beneficial owners are. Tax havens, they ask and they know who's behind their corporations. They just won't tell you. Here we'll tell you, but we don't know who's behind them. Ends up in the same place. We need to really pursue this solution of corporate transparency. It's one that the entire world is embracing, is very practical, it is not expensive, and it is a way to really move this movement forward. Now, of course, what's the big problem? Well, Congress is a little busy these days. The biggest problem we have is getting on the radar screen. And that's where people in this room could really make a difference. If you tell members of Congress that these existing bipartisan bills are important and worth their time, it is possible that we could get them enacted this year. There's a lot of interest in it. The Paradise Papers, the Panama Papers, national security issues, sex trafficking, a lot of reasons for them to move on this bill. There are anti-money laundering bills, there are larger ones that are being considered as well. So what's really going to be the problem is trying to get it on the radar screen. What's helping us is that business is interested in this. There are big businesses, financial institutions around the world that want us to take this step. Thank you very much.